New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. And good morning, dear ones. Dr. Robert with you here. It's a Saturday morning on the New Thought Media Network, and that means it is time for our Science of Mind and Spirit conversation series. Happens every Saturday morning here on New Thought Media Network. For those that this is not your first time here, you know that we have a revolving cast of characters that present this program each and every week and gives you a unique perspective, I trust, every week on this mighty philosophy known as the science of mind. Good morning, Fiona. Good to see you, dear one, all the way from Geneva. Glad you're with us. Dear Linda, yes, it is a snowy and cold Saturday morning here in Colorado. That is for sure. And my understanding is many places across the state are going to see some, across the country are going to see some weather as well. Shea Bird, good to see you. Grateful that you're with us. Glad you're here. Brother Wayne, all the way from Calgary. Glad you're here. Anyone that is with us and choosing to remain silent, hey, that's cool too. No worries. However, please do everyone know that this show is more than willing to be interactive with you. So if you have relevant questions to what we're covering or insights that you want to share, then by all means, please do. And we may just bring those into the show as we go. All right. Big, huge thanks to Reverend Mark Gilbert for being with us last week. He did, as always, a great job. I love the wealth of wisdom and unique approaches that this team brings to the topic of the science of mind. And Reverend Mark being on the board at the Science of Mind and Spirit Archives in library is just perfect. He has a deep wealth of what's going on at the archives. And as we're in the second half of our year, that means that is what we are focusing on is resources, articles, different things that you can find at the archives. Science Mind Archives and Library Foundation, where the past illuminates the future. And that's what we do. So if this is your first time with us, in the first half of the year, we move through the Science of Mind textbook chapter by chapter, and each person takes each week, and we take a chapter and discuss that and explore that. And then when we run out of material there, we jump over to the archives and bring forward all kinds of really, really fun stuff. And today, what I want to share is an article that I found, Affirmative Thought Patterns and How Habits Are Formed, by Dr. Ernest Holmes. So there is a link in the description of today's program where you can go and take a look at this on the archives website as well. And I encourage you to check out the website. Their membership, basic membership is $10 a month. That allows you to download materials and really dive in. And now you can look at a lot of this stuff. You just can't download it unless you're a member. So consider that. Consider becoming a member and supporting the archives. New Thought Media Network, we send them a monthly contribution every month to support the archives. So, good morning, Roy, all the way from Fort Morgan. Imagine you saw some snow overnight, late yesterday evening as well. Glad you're with us. It is the sun is coming out though. It's cold, but it's sunny here in Arvada already. So looks like it's going to be a glorious day with a whole lot of snow on the ground. So, all right. So let's get into it. What I want to cover today, affirmative thought patterns and how habits are formed, is it showed up at just the perfect time, because in my own way, these are some of the thoughts that some of the things we're going to discuss today have been really relevant for me in my learning and my teaching of this philosophy. Now, what we're going to do today is this is the transcript from a TV program that was presented on February 3rd, 1957. And in that program, we don't have video of it, but we do have we now have a complete transcript of what Ernest shared that night. So I'm going to read some of what he has to say. And hey, Brother Raymond, good to see you, sir. Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson, buckling in for a storm on the East Coast as well, I would imagine. So glad you're with us. Raymond is also one of our presenters here on Saturday mornings. You can catch some of his past explorations and discussions in the archives of this program over on our YouTube station. There's a playlist, got all the various talks from the last 3 years, 2 years now. 2 years, 3 years? I think this is the third year we're doing it. We're going into a new year too. All right, so let's dig in. And I might change some of the language here. I might update some of the language here. And I definitely have some insights on some of the points that Holmes is about to makes in this program. Again, this was originally broadcast on February 3rd, 1957. So the language is definitely a bit different. 25 years out, 55 years ago now. So good evening, friends. I want to talk tonight about affirmative thought patterns and how habits are formed. I want to bring this up there we go, so you can see a little bit. I want to talk tonight about affirmative thought patterns and how habits are formed consciously, which outwardly will control or certainly go a long way toward controlling our destiny and enable us to consciously decide what is going to happen in our experience. In the first place, thought patterns create habit patterns. I think this is very important. Thought patterns create habit patterns. For instance, suppose we are learning to drive an automobile and we know nothing about it at first. We're very self-conscious, we are aware and somewhat embarrassed at having to think of doing a half a dozen things at once and are easily confused. Gradually, with a little practice, however, something else within us seems to take over, almost as though it were another person, and the best and the safest driver is one to whom this has most completely happened. Driving automatically because has been formed within one somewhere in his mind. Lord knows where, a thought pattern which automatically reacts. So what he's saying here is, and I trust you've all experienced that, there is an innate knowing. There is an inner knowing. Sometimes we don't know how we know. Sometimes we don't know why we know something. We can't trace back where we came to know it. There's just a knowing within us that can automatically react to situations. Now, continuing, we are more or less governed by all of these thought patterns, and too many of them are patterns that we never created ourselves. We are governed by the thought patterns of the ages. For instance, some people will say, we have always had poverty. We have always had war. We have always had trouble. We always shall. Merely because the thought pattern of the ages are themselves repeating themselves. As Freud said, who discovered much of the action of the unconscious mind, Freud said a neurosis or an unhappy thought pattern will repeat itself with monotonous regularity throughout life as though it were an entity within itself. I've heard people speak of owning their sickness, my challenge in life, my this in life, my whatever in life. And often those are on that self-limiting side of the world, of our thought patterns. It sometimes it seems, and I've thought about this recently, sometimes it seems rather easy to get trapped in what's wrong and what's not working and the things that we don't like. Oh, my sciatica is acting up, or oh, my plantar fasciitis is flaring up. Oh, I've always been challenged by money. Oh, I've always been a sickly person. Oh, I've always had this and I've always had that. It's far easier to believe in our limitations, or at least this is what we're taught in the beginning, earlier in life, than it is to stand in that place of knowing and trusting the inner knowing that everything's working out. We have, and here's where we're going to move into some, get some more affirmations going, right? Now, we know that affirmative thought creates good things in our lives. Affirmative thought creates a healthy body. It maintains the normal functions of the system. Affirmative thought attracts to us according to our acceptance. This is the principle Jesus announced, and it is now scientifically proven to be true, that we are surrounded by some kind of an intelligent, creative medium, which receives the impress of our thought and acts upon it. Now, for many that are watching this program right now, this may seem to be the basics. This may seem to be, well, yeah, Robert, we know this. If you're new to the philosophy, if you're new to what we're doing here, this may be an epiphany, and this may be new information. And for many of us, we've heard these things before. We know we've heard this, we've read this before. And I believe that is one of the keys, the repetition of it all. And Holmes is going to agree with this in a little bit. The repetition is imperative. We must continue to surround ourselves by a recognition and an affirmation of exactly what's being said here, that we are surrounded by some kind of an intelligent, creative medium, which receives the impress of our thoughts and acts upon them. We know that certain plant seeds that are planted in the ground become perennial plants, and they continuously reseed. Let's get this back in here. And they continuously reseed themselves. Why? Come on, there it is. We reseed themselves. So the mind is sort of a perennial garden, ever bringing up to us the image of the thoughts we have had, that we have put in it. If then we learn to think affirmatively, more hope than despair, more faith than fear, more of a sense of security than uncertainty, and if we had more peace than we do confusion, gradually new thought patterns, new habit patterns are being laid down, which when they are firmly rooted, sort of take over, and we automatically bring to bear on any situation of peace, a peace and a calm and an assurance that is not only contagious among other people, but it silently attracts to us those things that we are affirming. Wow, what a sentence. I trust you're able to follow Holmes's thinking here. At the basis, what we put out is what we attract back. Now, we're going to talk about spiritual bypass in this piece, so hang tight, because Holmes, what I always have loved about Holmes is we're still in the very beginning phases of this half-hour lecture that he shared, this half-hour or 20-minute program that he shared. And by the time we're done, he is going to touch on all the major points of the new thought of the science of mind philosophy. I can't get it much bigger, Shay, because then it gets too big for me to be able to manage on my screen. Sorry. The link is in the description to pull this up and be able to grab this and take a look at it, which would give you the ability to blow it up bigger on your computer. Okay, so if we bring what automatically and when we automatically bring to bear on every situation a peace and a calm and an assurance that is contagious among other people, so it supports and brings to us the resources, the people, the opportunities, everything that's necessary to experience that which we are affirming. If we could come by to the realization that we are living in a universe of a divine intelligence governed by law, whose motivation is good, we could come into the thought habit and pattern. For instance, of thinking that no matter where we go or whomever we meet, we shall always be among friends. And I love this one because if anyone here has ever walked down a city street, and if you've ever walked down a city street late at night or in the evening or in a neighborhood where maybe you don't know where you are or something, you know this feeling. Because just as we can use these principles to create the good in our lives, see, remember, we're defining the universe as whose motivation is good. The divine power, the one, the motivation is good. So if we can remember that, then that's what we're gonna find in our lives. People that are helpful, people that give us directions. However, if our thought pattern is this isn't safe, I'm not in a safe space, I shouldn't be here. Now, there's two things going on here. One, we want to listen to our intuition, but also we can feed that fear. And again, it is so easy to feed that fear. And therefore, there may be no threat around us, but we believe there is. And we begin to look at everyone we encounter as if they are suspect and part of the fear, rather than looking at everyone that we encounter as the potential help and the possibility, the motivation for good. You with me? Shout it out in the notes if you're still with us here this morning. Holmes continues. Now, this might contradict much of our experience. Let's bring this back. Now, that might contradict much of our experience when we first affirm it, because you know as well as I do that often when we seek to change our thought patterns, it is as though something within us arises and argues against it and says, you can't. It couldn't be that way. It isn't going to be that way. It never has been. And we are confronted by what the whole world thinks and our previous experiences, and yet we're still dealing with habitual thought patterns that are repeating themselves with monotonous regularity and bringing often into our experience the very things we would like to shun. I'd like to lose some weight. Oh, but I can't lose weight. I don't know how to lose weight. Diets are a fad. This doesn't work. I've tried that stuff. It doesn't work. We believe that we're not capable of making change, that change isn't possible. And therefore, by believing that we cannot do it, we fulfill that belief pattern, and we're no longer in alignment with the truth of the divine, and we don't see the resources right in front of us. We don't see the connections right in front of us that would help us accomplish our goal if we but came to that deep sense of faith that we can. New Thought and the science of mind as a branch of New Thought, as a teaching within the New Thought movement, New Thought teaches us very, very clearly that we do have the ability and the power to change things. But in order to change things, we also have to be willing to accept that we had believed falsely that we had made it up in a way that doesn't work. Anyone that's involved in a 12-step program or recovery program is going to feel right into this. We made up a life that wasn't working, but that doesn't mean we can't make up our life differently. However, I have believed that what I am sitting in is called a chair for so long, it would take a very long time for me to start to believe this is anything other than a chair. The very experience we are seeking to be free from continues to present itself to us. See, that diet didn't work. That fad didn't work. That potion didn't work. To give us time to create and truly believe what it is we desire. Science Mind is called a faith. It's been called a philosophy, a faith, and a way of life. And I've been really leaning into that over the past few months. And I had actually, it's one of those phrases that had kind of escaped my use. And then it popped up and reminded me of its existence. And I've really been leaning into it because I think that is in many ways the keys to remembering how to make this work. We have to understand the philosophy. We understand the philosophy by showing up to classes like this. We understand the philosophy by reading reading Holmes and others in our own time and interpreting those for ourselves. We work the philosophy by showing up to classes. And at a certain point, we understand the philosophy. And we perhaps don't need to go back and review the basics every week or every month or whatever it may be. And we can start to explore the philosophy of the greater nuances of this teaching. But at a certain point, we have to move beyond the intellectual philosophication, is that a word? Philosophication of this in our mind, and we have to anchor it in our heart. And that is where it becomes a faith. I don't know how this is going to work, but I know it's going to work. If I do my affirmative work, if I do my prayer work, there is within me a power that will change the conditions around me so that it is easier for me to remain in alignment with the divine principles. Or not. Or not. And that is what we call a misuse of the law. More on that in a little while. So we philosophicalize what's the truth and how we approach it. We have faith that it's working, and we prove that faith by working it, by not giving up, by not getting up in the morning and saying, oh, hooey, this isn't working. I'm not going to believe this stuff today. And then we make it a way of life. Then we make it a way of life. That's the next important step. We make it a way of life. I've heard the question asked in numerous ways over the years and by numerous people over the years. And as I was preparing for this morning, it struck me. The lineage I know this phrase by is through Rev Dr Fred Vogt, Minister Emeritus, Mile High Church. And he would ask the question, if you were brought into court and brought up on charges of being a religious scientist, now that was the phrase of the day. We're going to say, if you were brought in and brought up on charges of being part of the New Thought movement, would there be enough evidence to convict you? would there be enough in your history that proves you understand these principles and you know how to use them? Big question. Let's go back to Holmes. For instance, if a person would take the simple thought, there is an intelligence that goes before me and prepares the way. I am carrying nothing but friendship, love, consideration. I have no attitude other than that which it wishes well to everyone, and this is the only thing that is going to come back in my experience. At first, in making this affirmation, thought patterns might come up that deny it, and he might remember many experiences that were quite contrary to the thing he is now holding affirmatively in his thought. And all the suggestions of previous times will come up and say, well, think of yesterday and think of the day before. So the wisest man who ever lived, after having given a very simple formula for affirmative thought in relationship to the universe in which we live, which Jesus called faith and belief, said, it is done unto you as you believe. Here's our faith piece. Therefore, he said, when you believe, when you pray, believe and you will receive. That's affirmative thinking. And knowing that everyone meets conditions and situations that contradict his highest hope, he said, when you do this, close your eyes to everything else and judge not according to the appearance. Now, that was a wise thing. The first settlers who went down into Imperial Valley found nothing there but desert land and waste spaces, excess of heat, nothing growing. They saw something that was quite contrary to what they wanted ultimately to experience. But they judged not according to what they saw. They said, if this land is cultivated, water is brought into it, it is irrigated, then it will someday blossom. It will become a garden spot of the world. Therefore, they changed the whole sequence of what otherwise had been going on for millions and millions of years over and over again. Just exactly as an unhappy thought pattern in our own consciousness perpetuates the very condition we would like to avoid, and all in accord with a definite law of cause and effect in our own mental life. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. I believe at times it is an immature understanding of this philosophy, and therefore an incomplete expression of faith that leads us to question not only the to question the process, if you will, to question that this stuff really, and then we have a demonstration that reminds us, wow, this stuff really works. And we come up with phrases that to the immature student, to the ones that have not had the chance to really deepen their faith in this, really deepen their understanding of the philosophy, it seems rather trite. It seems rather superficial. Change your thinking, change your life. And yet, from the more studied perspective, that phrase, change your thinking, change your life, absolutely quick and easy way to remind myself. If I don't like what's going on in my life, I do have the power within me to change that. All right, let's go back to Holmes. Well, we used to put all these things in the realm of superstition and wondered if we had to have some kind of a peculiar religion or some secret that we knew between God and ourselves, which had not been revealed to others. That is no longer necessary. We now know that there is a principle involved. We have a knowledge of how it works. We know that there is a technique or way to use it, and we now know through experience that those who use it rightly and persist in affirmative thinking will most certainly prove their position. So Jesus said, but thou, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, that is shut out eternal things, Stop thinking of that the only thing that can happen has to be a repetition of what has happened. Just because it's always been true in my life doesn't mean it has to remain that way. Therefore, I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when you pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Now, this is an important thing in creating new thought patterns, because you see, a thought pattern is just a result of what we have done or what we have taken on from others, or read, or all the things that the world has believed. Like there must always be war, there must always be poverty, there must always be disease. Why? In research work and science, they do not go along on that principle at all. They say it doesn't matter what has been, there is something that will work. We shall experiment with it until we get a new result. Then we know that every time we form or create the right mold, the new result is certain to follow. Jesus knew this, but he knew it in a different way. And the way is that he was speaking about the inner or spiritual life of man. Jesus was talking about the creative side of that silent, whatever you may call it, that invisible partner within us, which cooperates with us in everything we do, whether we know it or not. The truth works. I have long said that once you understand this philosophy, once you understand these principles, you can pretend that they don't work, but the truth is they work it. They work. So whatever it is that you are creating in your mind, you will experience a similar creation in the physical experience of your life. Holmes continues on, but it is certain that in the thought patterns which we lay down, the principle which operates upon them is rather impersonal. It does not say, well, I don't think that is so good for you. It doesn't say, are you sure you really don't want something different? It doesn't say, it doesn't question. Any more than the creative soil in the ground would say, if we plant turnips, perhaps you don't want turnips. Brother Elzea loves his seed soil plant analogies, and Holmes does too, and we all do, because it is such the easy way to remember this. There is no way that I can plant turnips and expect to have the flavor of potatoes or tomatoes. Now, we can liken our own inner creative mind and call it the soil of our mind, the creative principle within us. And we can say our thoughts are seeds that fall down in there just as seeds cast onto the ground. As a matter of fact, one of the parables of Jesus was exactly this. He called it the parable of the sower. We can just as well recultivate this. We may definitively and consciously dig up, as it were, the negative patterns of thought. And here's the part of that technique. Just as an affirmation creates a positive, definite thought patterns create what we desire rather than what we do not. So an opposite thought is like digging up the weeds. We have within us the ability to and I've never liked the idea of, cancel. We say something we don't like and cancel. Privately, that works. Publicly, to me, that doesn't always really work. It feels kind of made up. However, if it's working for you, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. Whatever it takes to eliminate the old false beliefs, the beliefs that no longer serve. Many times, I have many stories, and I'm not going to go into them because each one is unique, and that's what I encourage you to consider this day, is once you have identified a negative, a limiting belief, something that no longer serves, something you no longer wish to experience in your life, you dig up the weed. Take a look at where it came from. Where did you first hear that? Draw back, follow that seed, follow that plant, follow that root back to its seed. And then in that moment, when you have a better understanding of this is where this comes from, then it is very easy to say, is that really necessary any longer? Is that the truth of who I am? Now, the thing is, and we don't need to go back, you don't, quote, need to go back and explore where the seeds started. You can rip up the weed as long as you get all the roots. The thing is, any gardener will tell you, sometimes some weeds leave behind roots. And if we leave behind the roots, then the root often can germinate and grow again. And then we've got another weed right there where it always was, where it is always going to be. So it's important we get to the very bottom of the weed so that we can pop into, so we can not only arrest the future growth, but now we have clean soil by which to plant what it is we really want. Back to Holmes. Whoops. Yeah. We are individuals. We have been given the power to change our thinking and our thinking about life and human destiny and God and the future. Everyone, I believe, is immortal. I believe that all men and women are on the pathway of an eternal existence, forever expanding, always more and never less. And I believe that all people ultimately will arrive at a goal of good. How much better to think that than to wonder, than to be afraid, than to look forward with uncertainty and doubt and misgivings to the future. Therefore, I think it is impossible to change our thought patterns in the best. Therefore, I think it is impossible. Read this. Be with this on me. I think it is impossible to change our thought patterns in the best possible manner without first having arrived at some deep conviction about life. A greater faith in whatever this thing is that we call life and God, the living spirit, and a complete conviction that we have a silent partnership with the power that sets the stars in their course, which also may guide our destiny if we permit it. Am I willing to give it up to God? Holmes continues, but we are free. So in one sentence, he's saying the easiest way to do this is completely surrender and give it all up to God. But we are free, willing individuals. We do have choice. And if we didn't have, we would be automations. We would not be people at all. And so we not only have the right, but it is imposed upon us that we shall suffer the consequences of all of our thinking. And if our thought patterns are not deliberately changed, they will endlessly repeat themselves. So we have to feel that we are seizing upon a great principle in nature, a deep secret of our own being, and something I think that we can dramatize in our own consciousness, because the imagination plays a big part in this. You see, we have an imagination and a feeling and we have a will or an intellect. It is the office of the will and the intellect to consciously decide and choose what we want to think about. It is the office of the imagination to feel the reality of what we are thinking about. Thoughts first, imagination follows. And so we have to sort of put together thought definitively and deliberately chosen, and a feeling which is always there, and a sort of inward awareness and conviction that all is well, and use this combination without coercion. without seeking to exercise the will to dominate anything in nature, or holding thoughts or concentrating, all of which are entirely foreign to every law of nature we know anything about. You see, the laws of nature are self-existent. They are there, they work, they have no effort in working. Life turns itself into all the forms it takes through an effortless process, and so you and I will have to cooperate with something which we do not oppose. This is the meaning of non-resistance. The more we resist things, the more real they become to us. But if they are reduced through sort of a feeling that we do not have to struggle against them, there is a power greater than that, and they seem silently to steal away, to slip away. But right now, you and I and everyone living is pretty much governed by all the thought patterns that he or someone else has laid down and which have unconsciously been accepted. All the thought patterns of the ages, repeating the habits generation after generation, which may be limiting and unhappy and destitute of hope. And so we have to deliberately change them. Every advance in history is marked by someone reaching a new horizon and passing beyond the previous experience. And with an inward feeling and conviction and hope, perhaps built upon a longing and an inward intense desire, guiding one to something that is new and something that finally revolutionizes perhaps a whole science, a whole industry. But we have to start with revolutionizing our own inward consciousness, carefully watching to see what thoughts arise from our minds that would deny the good we would like to experience. Now, someone might ask, is it right? Is it a good thing? Do we really have this privilege? I think we do. We have the privilege of choosing in everything. There is no power in the universe, that having created man wishes to destroy humanity. That's complete nonsense. Whatever the powers may be, whatever God may be, or life is good. There is nothing in the universe that conspires against man but himself. And so far as you and I are concerned, it is useless to ask others, how shall we think? What shall be our salvation? What shall we do to be made happy? There is no one living who has the power to give life to us. There is no one living that has the power to give life to us. It has already been given. There is no one living who has the intelligence to govern your life or tell you what to do but yourself. You, yourself, just as I, myself, must be and ought to be, and in reality are the arbiters of our own thinking. Here is what the Bible has chosen to call the secret place of the Most High. Dwelling upon the shadow of an overpower in the universe, which is greater than we are, with silent trust and faith, in sort of a childlike acceptance, we may, if we will, uproot all the old patterns that have limitations, the fears, the doubts, the pain and uncertainty, and in their place replant a new garden, a garden of Eden, in which we may live in happiness, in joy, and in peace. And isn't it wonderful that we and only we shall choose, and we and only we shall execute? And isn't it wonderful to know that we have this privilege now, today? I love Holmes. I hope you do too. And I trust I do him some justice in the readings of these transcripts and in my interpretation of them. And I trust that that serves your deeper study of Holmes's philosophy that's become known as the science of mind, and a philosophy that is part of a greater New Thought movement. And I recognize that we each are creating our own philosophy. Very simple, very similar often, And I invite each of us to take that philosophy and have faith that this stuff works if you work it. And have faith that we can change our lives simply by changing our thinking. To have faith that as we change our lives, then we are creating a habit, a vibration, a belief system on the planet that is serving the evolution of human consciousness. I have faith that we really are creating a world that works for all life, all the time. This is not a faith that we practice on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings. It is a faith that we create, that we use to create a way of life, a way of living. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being with us this morning. I want to thank you for being a part of what we're doing here on the New Thought Media Network. It works if you pull the weeds all the way out. Exactly, Shaybird. And if we have given ourselves a sense of compassion, if we treat ourselves with a sense of compassion and kindness, because we got to remember, many of us weren't taught this. Many of us had our gardens planted for us. And each of us comes to our awakening of this truth in our own way. And so for some, what may seem like a review, for others is a revelation. And in that, I encourage every one of us to be part of the revelation, to be a living demonstration of this truth, to use these principles just for ourselves, but for the collective good of humanity. And it doesn't mean that we need to go out and proselytize. It doesn't mean we need to go out and shove this down everybody's throats. It just means we need to share the truth as we know it in a way that is authentic and aligned with the divine. To share the truth as we know it that is authentic and aligned with the divine. That is our call this day. That is my invitation to you this day. So I want to say thank you again for being with us. We're done. Just this program is designed to be about 45 minutes to 45 to 55 minutes. So it's not designed, to go a full hour. And of course, I've already forgotten who is up for next week. So let's go find out who's going to be here with us next week. Folks, if you do have questions about what you heard here today, or you would like to explore this in a different way, you're welcome to reach out and connect with us. Let's see. Victoria Bomberry is here next week. Tracy Brown is back on the 23rd, and I will be back on January 30th. For this as well. Blessings to you, Brother Raymond. Looking forward to seeing you in just about an hour from now. We're gonna talk about that, folks, because we got a couple minutes and you're still hanging out. Reverend Dr. I say brother, and Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson started an amazing conversation recently called decolonize, asking the question, what is it going to look like when we decolonize New Thought? How is it going to show up? And a number of people are involved in that conversation, and there's already a Facebook group about it and all kinds of fun stuff. And we're getting together later today for a big meeting and a big discussion with those that are already involved to say, what do we do with this? What does this really look like? How would we really dig into decolonizing New Thought? And I tell you, I think it is a conversation whose time has come, and I'm really excited about it. So I give all due respect and all props to Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson for the courage and the conviction to step into this conversation and lead what I am sure is going to be a whole bunch of great opinions and perspectives on what this means and how it means. So that's the kind of work. I'm not gonna try to co-opt Raymond's work here, but that I'm excited because that is the type of work I think is most beneficial for the evolution of human consciousness and the New Thought movement. So New Thought Media Network is proud to be representing and attending this later today. So and such. All right, I'm going to get out of here for now, folks. Thanks for being with us. Before we do go, however, I invite you to please stick around for just one more minute and help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors and individual donors. Please don't go away. Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. Yes. Thank you, dear ones, for supporting the New Thought Media Network and all the work we're doing, getting this message out into the world in new, innovative, and greater ways. And if you would like to have your name or your organization included in the next version of our thank you video, which is due out at the beginning of the month, by all means, please do connect with us. Head over to ntmedia.org. Click on the donate button and create a monthly donation. We'll be in touch and share more with you about the advantages. And if you'd like to learn more about organizational sponsorship and the benefits there, please let us know. We'll be happy to connect with you on that. All right, folks, I'm going to get out of here. Laughing at a quick comment that we'll just save for another time. I'm Dr. Robert. I love you. And until we connect again, I wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.